Hello, I am back. It is Brian here. It is the Art of Startup War. Again, I am here with a phenomenal entrepreneur, an entrepreneur that we have invested in, an entrepreneur that we fully intend to invest more in. If we do not put an additional $1 million into this company, it would be the most surprising thing that has happened in my entire life. And that is because not only do I love this company, but I always remember speaking to my partner in this. And the first time I spoke to my partner, he said, for this person, this company, to be able to provide what they say they provide, I would give away 2/3 of my fortune. That is how important this is. So today we are going to focus on the area of painless aging. And this whole space, we have a massively aging population. We have more people over the age of 50 than we have ever had in the history of the world. All of those people have got one thing in common, and that is the older they get, the more stuff hurts. What I love about this company is that it is entirely focused on eliminating that pain in the future. What a great mission. What a fantastic company. What a great space. And like I said, from my side of it, I am just happy to bring Jointechlabs through to the show. And Nishit, welcome. It's good to see you, buddy.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you. It's great to be here. And thank you for the generous introduction. I'm super excited to tell you my personal story and also how Jointechlabs is going to be the worldwide leader in regenerative medicine.
Oh, I love it. And it's a wonderful story as well, because it speaks to this very important place where 10 years ago, I would have thought of it as something for somebody else. But now it's becoming very personal because I'm thinking my joints don't hurt yet. I'm still playing some good tennis. But 5 or 10 years' time, I want to make sure that there's nothing going to slow me down. And that's all we want, right? We work our whole lives. We do everything we're supposed to do. We take care of our families. We work hard. And then we get to a stage where we say, isn't this great? Now we can relax. We can have fun. We can go out. And then we wake up in the morning and it's like, oh, God, that hurt. Hang on, I just need an extra minute or two. So I love this whole space of regenerative medicine, and I believe this is going to be one of the biggest booms over the next 10 or 15 years. So anyway, that's why we invested. What I want to know, and what everybody listening wants to know, is why did you do that? Like, you could have had such an easy life. You're a brilliant, genius, doctor-type specialist who you could have gone in, people could have said to you, Doctor, what do you think we should do? And you could say, I think you should do this. And then you go home to your beautiful house and you can tell people about the lives that you saved that day and have a nice, comfortable weekend and live life large. But you didn't do that. You decided that you were going to go into the space of innovation and actually helping hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people instead of 1, 2, 3, or 5. So I would love you to take us through that journey because I'm sure it can't have been an easy decision.
Absolutely. For starters, I would like you to beat your son 10 years down the road. So he'll beat him in tennis.
Listen, you got me as a fan forever. Would you just tell me how much I have to invest?
All right. So again, you're absolutely right. I could have been very happy doing what I did in the past in regards to having a degree in medicine, practicing, clinic-based medicine and so on. But I chose different, right? And for a reason. Growing up in India, a traditional upper class, middle family, working in a government hospital, it was not easy to see because we've never been, growing up in a good family, you traditionally go to these private hospitals, never seen anything like what I saw in those government hospitals, people suffering because of the lack, disparity in access to healthcare, a lot of people suffering, even few dying, because of a better lack of, access to better healthcare. Wow. So in med school, that was a problem, right? Because even when you're going through your trainings, your rotations, your internships, they never teach you. They teach you all about your body, how you can fix it using medicine, surgery for the most part. There's not a lot of innovation, right? Like nothing that helps you think out of the box, develop anything novel. You're just probably following for like 90% of the time. So that's when, I kind of had it in my mind not to focus so much on delivering a practice-based healthcare, but to make myself capable so I can innovate, right, in healthcare. So that's where kind of the journey started. I came to the US to exactly do that, to learn how to develop novel products in medicine, learn how to run those clinical trials. So I enrolled myself in a master's for biomedical and clinical research in Chicago, right? That's where I started off 2 years. I learned a lot of novel ways of running trials, developing products, and so on. So much so that I developed within that program a new diagnostic tool for kidney failure patients, and actually ran the clinical trials for the validation. So
Wow.
that was kind of early success that I got in that regard. So it gave me a great opportunity to kind of learn through the thought process behind innovation, how it needs to be validated in the very tightly regulated medical world, right? So that's where it all started. So around the same time, I was reading, getting involved in evolving field of stem cell research in the university. It was a time when the funding moratorium, because there was a funding moratorium during the Bush era, and when I came in, it was removed around that time frame on stem cell research, and the world saw a stem cell researcher getting a Nobel Prize in 2012. And that was Yamanaka for doing excellent research on stem cells. So, following graduation, I was hired by the local hospital as a biomedical research scientist to develop a newer source of using, adipose or fat-derived stem cells. And, that's where the journey started in this whole regenerative medicine space. So I worked in the lab with my mentor to develop these newer sources of, fat-derived stem cells, how to isolate them, and so on. And then, we spun off that research into a startup. It was called VivaStem, and it was focused mainly on veterinary stem cell development, because that was kind of the closest we could go in that era, because it was still a very evolving field. Humans were still a lot far away in terms of even research.
I still remember Molly the sheep.
Absolutely, Molly the sheep, right? So what we did in VivaStem, we of course did a lot of R&D. We developed products for companion animals and horses. But really, my real interest lied in developing, a human stem cell based product, because that's what I set out to do. This was kind of a more of a channeling to kind of reach there. And so to accomplish this mission, I had to lead innovation, and get affordable natural therapies that the world can access. During that period, I was in Chicago, of course. I met Nathan. It's a very small biotech community in Chicago, as you would understand. It's not like a SoCal or, nothing to do with it. It's not a very big biotech community. So we kind of met a few times during events and, conferences and so on. And it was, and Nathan's, by the way, is my partner in Jointechlabs and the co-founder with me. So we shared a common goal and a common interest to develop these novel products in regenerative medicine space. And the realization was solid because, both of us in regards to, we knew what the potential of stem cells was, how regenerative medicine can help the millions who suffer, right, from pain, especially, as you mentioned, joint problems as they age. Both our mothers, in fact, both our mothers suffered from joint issues due to, aging and osteoarthritis, but they didn't have any choice back then, like, just take painkillers, steroids, or go under the knife for joint replacements, right? So, and I'm sure, everybody, as your story also is, I know about a little bit about your father with the rheumatoid arthritis he had, or millions around the world who, majority of the households who suffer from the similar problems. And we wanted to do something about it, right? That's when truly Jointechlabs was born in our minds, right? That this is what we want to do. So we were working on lab protocols, for extraction of these stem cells from humans. And now, everything was lab-based, right? Up until then, nothing was, okay, how do we take it to the clinic? How do we take it from the bench to the bedside? And we started off this idea of this device, that can do the same thing a $500,000 lab can do in a small, portable, affordable manner, right?
Incredible.
So we went through all the device prototyping, multiple iterations, as you can imagine, validations for the product. And finally, we were confident, we had like the 4th or 5th prototype that we were working on, and we to start talking with the FDA.
How long did that process take you? Because you say it very quickly, but I know the pain of building an FDA compliant product. It's a nightmare. It's just, and by the way, that's after you've invented it. You have to invent it first. Like there has to be a pure, like a basic
Yeah,
a
absolutely.
solution that it has to do first.
Yeah,
So talk to us a little bit about that.
yeah, absolutely. So as I said, it all started with validations in the lab in regards to how the tissue can be processed efficiently, what is the viability, what is the number of cells you get, and so on. And then, of course, it started with napkin drawings on how we can translate this into a smaller device, which can help us do the same thing we are doing in the lab, because we kind of knew step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 that needs to happen. And how do we translate that? And we started with napkin drawings, of course, as everything starts off. And then it gradually, we had designers in place that we worked on a consulting basis, and they helped us formulate a design, an initial design. And I still have a picture somewhere, and it literally looks nothing like what the device is today. So it started there. It was like a huge, like a box like of device that it would have never, no doctor would have ever used it. But then from there on, there were multiple iterations, and it lasted, to answer your question, about 5 years. 5 years from the start of where we started those iterations and validations up until we were really ready with, as I said, like the 4th or the 5th prototype to actually start talking to the FDA.
That is a labor of love.
Absolutely.
And then when you went to the FDA, what did they say?
So even the FDA, the whole space was very confused. Like the field has been evolving, I would say, since the early 2000s, even with the FDA. But they were never really sure on how to regulate it, right? Yeah. Because there were, and you probably know this, like there were a lot of quacks, going offshore.
Oh, totally. No, and it's awful, because what you realize is some of this is like, I call my mom every I call my mom a bunch of times, but every Sunday we have a good long conversation. And my mom is really into conspiracy theories right now. Like she's really into them. And she finds stuff out like Joe Biden is a clone, Donald Trump is waiting to come back and take over. There's underground mines. And like, so there's always a basis of something within a conspiracy theory, which is a little has got a basis, right? Because of either a person or because of something or because it's new or because of whatever else. But what happened with stem cells, it was just a really interesting war at the beginning of ignorance versus evolution. Like that's literally what it was. And you had certain people who were trying to go in the evolution side, but they were going too fast. And you had certain people on the ignorant side that were just saying no at all costs. But this is so incredibly important. Like this is us. This is the essence of us. If we're not working with that and using that to try and heal ourselves, we just fail. So the answer is always regulation. It is never to stop. So it was a very interesting period. I actually watched it really closely over the time. And I think it's come to a really good place now. I mean, we could all argue that maybe there was like 5 or 10 years wasted in the middle, but now we're in a place where really strong, intelligent, innovative, well thought through minds are prevailing.
Absolutely. You nailed it 100%, I would say, right from where it was a confusing period with a ban on the embryonic stem cell research. From there on, everybody getting confused. So this is, just to clarify, all adult derived stem cells, right? Nothing to do with embryonic. Mm-hmm. So we're not killing any babies, just FYI. So, that was a lot of confusion. Nobody knew, where the source was and where it was coming from and all of that. So that led to, almost 10 years being wasted. So even in fact, a lot of foreign countries, ex-US, they moved very fast in the space because they understood what the potential is. And Japan is a prime example. Like they are at the forefront of regenerative medicine. Like even the FDA kind of copies Japan on the regulations. Like they realized it back like in 2016, 2017, that we have to, as you mentioned, regulate this. Saying no is not an answer, but the regulation in place is the answer. So from there on, you would, still see hoardings in Florida and Texas, ex-US, of course, with all these magical stem cell treatments, which give a lot of misinformation to people and, kind of hurt the real people who are doing actual work towards bringing regulated therapies to the market.
Yeah, but the joy of what it can bring. So let's speak to the real benefits of what it can bring and why it's so important to have this in the world, because I think this is a wonderful segue.
Absolutely.
This is great. This is like my easiest interview ever. I feel like I'm listening to a TEDx talk. So this is just keep going. So I really want to get to the stage of like, what does the world look like with this being done properly?
Absolutely. So with now the regulations in place, we understand what the regulatory authorities need, especially here in the US and EU and so on. So now, with having this device, right, which is FDA cleared in the United States, at least to start off, what we can do is put these devices, make it as ubiquitous as probably a blood pressure machine, which it can now happen with a device in each doctor's place. It's disposable devices. Each patient uses one device, and then they can get their own stem cells or part of the stem cells and use it for a lot of clinical indications for natural anti-aging, right? So be it joint problems, be it wounds which never heal, like a lot of probably there's about 10 to 15 million people just in the United States actively suffering because they don't have any real treatments for chronic diabetic wounds, right? It's a huge unmet need. There's all kinds of dressings that don't work. This potentially has the ability to heal and regenerate those wounds. You can avoid using synthetic treatments for a lot of these joint problems, as well as avoiding steroids, avoiding painkillers, also for a lot of aesthetic and reconstructive purposes, which is not easy a lot of times. Like think of a cancer patient, right, who's just had a mammectomy done, and she has to rebuild a breast based on something synthetic, which now they can totally avoid with a natural product of their own, right? Use their own fat in a viable manner, in a regulated manner to redevelop their breasts. It's a huge mental relief even for them, rather than using something synthetic, right?
And I just want to really emphasize one word for all listeners here, whether they're investors or whether you're general public, and the word is nature. This is not, most of what is put in your body for whatever you're trying to fix is from something else. It has been put in from a different place, whether it's somebody else's fat is put into your body because you tried to do an elective surgery, or whether you have a new hip put in, or you have a new joint, or you have whatever. This is your own stem cells. Like, you're taking it from your own body. It is the most pure and natural thing that you have. Like, the chances, so not doing this is actually a travesty in my mind. And what I love about what you had is it was really hard to do before, because you had to go away, you had to have it done in a lab, then you had to have it sent back to you, and then you have all this challenge of the travel and the moving it and the coming back and the integrity of it being so. All of that is a challenge. While what's so incredibly innovative about what you're bringing to the market is literally the doctor can do it there and then.
Absolutely, right? At the point of care, right in a room like you and me are sitting, because the device is disposable. It's a closed loop system, which means everything happens within the device. There is no influence of any external environment, which is very important, right? Because you need to keep everything sterile, and that's possible with our devices, which of course takes half an hour to actually isolate the tissue from the body and use it for any natural treatments, as I mentioned.
And then, so let's think about the treatments for a second. So one is very simple. I've got my fingers out here. I want to make sure it goes into my joints. My joints have worn away a little bit because it's been a bunch of years since they've been used, and I probably haven't been too kind to them. Maybe I've run on them. I've been playing a bunch of tennis, and my joints are saying, enough, Brian, we got nothing left. We got no cartilage. We got nothing. And then, hey, presto, here this comes. Like, how magical is this for me? Like, let's say I've really worn down my knees. They hurt. Let's say I walk in, and normally what I would do is I would get something else, which would be a pain reliever, which we put into my joints. How long can this last for? And what's the probability of the pain subsiding, and maybe the percentage of pain that will subside?
So we have had 80% success in whatever trials we've done using this method, right? So what it does, it definitely reduces pain, inflammation, and helps with the regenerative impetus. So don't underestimate the body. The body is already trying, as you degenerate your joints with age, the body is already fighting back. It's trying to, recruit local stem cells and, do as much as it can, with, of course, a healthy lifestyle that you have to maintain to kind of, revive the joints and, decrease the pain and so on. But it's not enough, as we all know, right? So what this device and then the eventual product that comes out of it does, it relieves the pain, it gives an impetus for regeneration and decreases the inflammation, so that there is 80% relief, which can last from anywhere between 12 to 24 months easily, which can then be maintained over a repetitive dose or a procedure that can be done every 12 months or so.
Wow. And what are the other indications? That indication is a no-brainer to me. What else can you use it for? And and just visually for everybody listening, and think of it like this. You got bad guys attacking your castle, right? But you only have 5 or 10 people up on the top walls of the castle trying to fight them back. And they're fighting them back with spears. And what they need is, the spears are fine. They just need another 500 people on top of the castle. So really, all that's happening here is those 500 people are just being moved into one place so they can all work together to try and fight back the bad guys, right?
Absolutely right. So that's the whole idea, as I said, to giving impetus to your body to, work the way it was working when you were 20 years old.
Oh, bring it back. And then what else? Okay, so on top of the joints, what else can you use it for?
Absolutely. So, wound healing, as I said, being a huge unmet need, that's the one we are focusing on as well, where, you have the wounds debrided, which means clearing off the trough of the wound and filling it up with the product that comes out of it and using it as a dressing over a repeated period of time.
Wow.
To heal these wounds, right?
And what would be the so again, talk to me about the difference in efficacy between because what would folks do normally? They would just put a dressing on the wound and maybe some ointment and then hope it's going to.
Absolutely. So there is a lot of progress in wound healing as well. There's a lot of negative pressure kind of dressings that are in place and so on, but none of them have yet successfully healed any of these chronic wounds, right? So there's diabetic wounds where people have a high sugar, which prevents actual healing, be it wounds or anything else. So what this procedure will do is to give an impetus again to use and recruit local stem cells. So if you have these, the microfat or the stem cells injected around the wound, layer it as a dressing on top of the wound for a repeated number of applications, it gives the impetus for the wound closure, right? So about 50 to 60% higher than what it would otherwise.
And is there a maximum amount of stem cells that you can take out of your body? I mean, so if I have a big wound, is there that I can't take out enough to cover that wound, or?
Oh, no. So you can take, even in fact, like if you just take 60 ml, like, small amount of your fat, you can get millions and millions of stem cells.
So,
right?
So then in that case, why is this not being used more often? Again, is it just because of the hassle of having to send it away and then have it come back again?
Absolutely. So the problem was the access, right? The tooling. No, like there wasn't devices. People were doing it in a crude manner. Somehow taking fat from somewhere, as you mentioned, putting it somewhere else. So the viability was a huge issue, right? So as soon as you start sending out, it has to be temperature controlled. It has to be managed with sterility, and all of that. So as probably more than half the time, the tissue that you get back or the cells that you get back are dead, right? So it's not going to give that effect as it would when you're doing it right there in a sterile manner.
So folks listening to this, and I know you, and I know you're a very humble person, and actually I have to spend most of my time pulling this out of you because your core is in science and your core is in healing people. But, folks listening to this would believe that, you have some form of gold there, because this is not a nice to have. It's not a paper cut, as our friend Ryan Foland would say. This is a massive finger chopped off. I mean, doctors all around the country. And I'm going to move to emerging countries in a couple of minutes because I want to really talk about that. But doctors all around America are going to really love having this thing brought into their surgery because it just makes their life so much easier.
Absolutely. And that's, and it's a fact. Like 5 years back when we used to talk to, orthopedic doctors or plastic surgeons, they used to give us a blank look on what the hell am I talking about, right? Because of, again, all the controversies around things, they've never had access to any of this. Now they realize, so there is a more and more number of medical practices, doctors wanting such biological products, right? Because they know what synthetics do in the long run. In fact, even for joints, like as soon as you start injecting steroids, which is the only, kind of available treatment for a lot of joint issues, makes it worse. And there's ample research to show it just makes it worse over a period of time. So, they realize that, but they don't have any options till now, right? So now with this, they can do things in-house, within half an hour to 1 hour, which is, of course, everybody's time is important, including the patients, right? So everything is done in front of their eyes. So there is no issue, oh, where did my tissue go and what did you do with it, right? Because that's also, in terms of privacy, that's a big concern on where did things go, how was it labeled, and so on. Now you can practically process it in front of the patient and give it back right there. right?
And
So,
what about other devices out there that do similar type things?
so there is a device which kind of paved the way in the US. It's a European product that came in about 2.5, 3 years back. It's a product called Lipogens, which kind of built this whole space, if you will, and we are grateful for that. So they have a lot of drawbacks within the device, like, because literally the way the device is structured, like somebody has to literally shake the device for about 45 minutes, right? So it's a tubular device.
What a real person.
A real person, right? So
That's a terrible job. You have to be a shaker. I don't know if anybody has tried to shake something for 45 minutes. It's actually incredibly difficult. It's exhausting, actually.
And the most important thing is disrupts the workflow of the clinic, which none of the doctors like, right? Like you have somebody like a technician or even the doctor shaking a device for 45 minutes, right? It's not viable for the practice, right? So here, with our device, we use a centrifugal G-force, which takes, as I said, 20 minutes within the centrifuge. So of the overall 25 minutes it takes to actually process the microfat, 20 minutes is in the centrifuge. So you're not kind of bothering with the workflow of the clinic. The nurse or the technician is doing something else as they are processing this, right? So it's a very efficient, very less cumbersome way of doing things.
Okay, so one major advantage. What else?
So the other advantage is that their approval, which again, everything related to medicine, medical products comes off from approvals, right? Like you have to be regulated to be used. Their approval is for in procedure room, right? So like literally you have to have some kind of a day surgery room or an operating room to process the tissue. Whereas ours is a more portable in clinic approval where you can do it within, as I said, a room like you and me are sitting in. So practically anywhere.
Wow. And what about size? And also any differences in efficacy? Any difference in size?
Yes. So the way the device is, the Lipogens device processes the tissue, it actually has, doesn't use a G-force like we do, doesn't do a liquid phase separation. And I know it's technical, but I'm just trying to lay out that their device has these marble beads. So you're literally banging the fat against those marble beads, which breaks the fat in a way that you don't want it to break, because so fat has oils, fat has debris, and so on. So the viability is definitely less, and that's what it's our assessment as well in the validations that we have done one-on-one, but also validations from the doctors, right? So doctors didn't have anything up until now to use, and that's why they kept using Lipogens. But now that they have our device, many of them want to switch from Lipogens to our device. But as I said, it's much more easier to use, much more affordable MiniTC is, and much more viable cells at the end.
And what's the difference in pricing?
We are actually half the cost of Lipogens.
Come on. So if anybody's wondering why I'm sitting here looking really smug in the podcast studio, it's because we invested in him. I feel great. Like, this is superb. And then, so talk to us a little bit. So over here, and by the way, I'm spending way more time on the product here than I normally do. Normally we're spending all of our time on growth. But in this podcast, my message is the product is the growth.
Absolutely.
Like the fact of creating the right brand and messaging around the product provides the growth. We don't need to do all of the stuff that we used to have to do before because the product is that good.
Right.
And then so by the way, what's their valuation, more or less?
So it's still a private company. It's very difficult to kind of get a real sense of where they are at. But just to give you an example, they have been successful. As I said, they have been they are a European company that started about 7 years back. Mm-hmm. They've been in the US for about 3 years, and they've done about 36 to 40,000 procedures, 36,000 to 40,000 procedures.
Yeah.
And each procedure being about $1,500 that they sell at. You can kind of estimate the revenue, and from there on.
Yeah, they're a multiple $100 million company.
Probably at this
point. And you're coming in with a product which is half the price, which is more portable, which is simpler to use, which doesn't mean you got to be a 45-minute shaker. God forbid the thought. And it's simple. So I really so when I see products like yours, there's kind of two things that cross my mind as an investor, right? The first thing is I have to make sure that I'm fiscally responsible for my limited partner, right? Now, even though my limited partner believes, and he's biased, right? Because he's 78 and he's hurting right now. So he believes you're the best company we have. He's like, that company is the greatest company because he feels the pain
Absolutely.
that you solve, right? So he knows how good it is. At the end of the day, as an investor, it's not that difficult. It's that you want to see, is there a product that comes to a market which is a blockbuster? It breaks through in a way that's got massive innovation, that gives it years over anything else, whereby everybody's going to want to buy you, including your competitor, that you have the ability to be able to push out of the market. So on one side of it, I look at very hard facts when I'm going through all of my diligence, and I'm looking at, do I have an incredible founding team? Oh my gosh, off the charts, right? 10 out of 10. Do I have a product which shows sufficient differentiation from the rest of the market that can break through very easy and gives it also a head start against everything else? Absolutely. Do I have a product where I can see that the growth will go to $100,000 a month relatively easy? Yes, I got a straight line of growth. Do I have a market size that can satisfy $10 million a month in revenue? Absolutely, I do. And then I normally get to the very end, which is the last one, which is how is the entrepreneur in pitching? And the truth is you don't need to be that good because the product is so good and that you've put all of the focus on what's real in this world, which is bringing something out which is so strong and so defendable that no matter who the investor is who's listening to this podcast today, they are going to understand the magnificent benefits that you have. And so that to me is like just to hit it out of the park. So all of those boxes I ticked in the first conversation with you. It was just so it was clear as day to me.
Thank you.
Where it gets really beautiful for me is kind of not just what you can do in America, because I think you'll improve healthcare in America. Slightly older people will have less pain, which is amazing. And folks that have got wounds and even folks that want elective surgeries have got less of a chance of rejection and can heal quicker, which is amazing as well. But in developing countries, like people are literally dying because they don't have portable access to devices where they can do it. And they definitely have no ability to be able to store stuff, send it off to a lab, and then have it come back afterwards. So the impact, if I'm not wrong, is truly monumental. Like that's am I right in thinking that this is the major, I've made a difference in the world place for you?
Absolutely. As I said, I started off with that goal to not, better the lives of 1,000, 10,000 people in the clinic, sitting in the clinic and trying to hand out medicines to them. But overall, exactly the goal is to reach to the millions who are suffering in pain with, access to healthcare, which they otherwise wouldn't. So, again, think of this, right? Like all the medicines, the steroids, the painkillers, they're chemicals controlled by pharma companies, right? Here, what we are providing is something that's your own, right? You can practically access it anywhere in the world. It's not like, okay, there is no Pfizer in Ghana or there is no Pfizer in, say, I don't know, somewhere else in a third world country. I mean, fat is everywhere, right? If you have this device, the doctors know how to operate it, you can practically have it anywhere without the price consideration being that different, right? So that's kind of the main focus here for Jointechlabs is to be an ecosystem of global products, and not just in United States, but of course, make it affordable and accessible to everyone.
And really, in some ways, what you're starting to do is you're bringing hospitals to people rather than having people having to go to hospitals, right? So when you look at a lot of the developing nations around the world, those places, one of the biggest challenges they just deal with is remoteness, right?
Absolutely.
That's like when everything is broken down and we look at what's the fundamental challenge. Well, somebody lives 200 miles away from the nearest X. So they just can't get there, or we can't transport, or it's so expensive to transport things there that it becomes impractical. So by this being the beginning, and I know that your mission is not just to have this is merely the first product of regenerative, anti-aging, painless aging, and just really making a place. I know I see it. I see you having Apple stores all around the United States, right? And the Apple stores are for elderly folks where it goes in and it's like, what hurts today? I'm like, how much time have you got? And you click a button and it's like, okay, come in at 2:30 on Wednesday. Dr. Gupta is going to be here and is going to make sure that we take care of that and we reduce your pain down by 80%. And by the way, we can do it for this price here. And so I see, I make it say, I just say Apple stores because it should be a beautiful, transformative place. Like it shouldn't be something that's depressing, but it would be staffed and taken care of by people who truly care about painless aging. And that's where it's really beautiful. And then when you go over to all of these other developing countries as well, they just become a different type of painless aging location, but it's the same principle.
Absolutely. And again, even here or anywhere else, it could become a lifestyle product where you have, as you said, like these Apple stores or, med spas, as you want to call it, and have a lifestyle choice being made to do preventative things, right? Rather than reaching that phase where your knee is 80% damaged. Why don't you start earlier on, right? Just when it's 50% working, why don't you start getting these maintenance shots of your own natural stem cells, which can help it, go that much longer to, not have a knee replacement done, right? So it could, very well translate into that.
Oh, I love this. I love preventative is my favorite. Look, we're all such idiots, right? And we go through life and then we get to a place where, oh, God, I wish I'd actually had my eyes checked. Oh, I wish I hadn't actually gone skiing and jumped off big high mountains and landed on my knees all the time. And then we get to that place where we think, I wish we could change it. And so to actually educate people on the uplift, whereby we're being told what we should do to make sure that our body's in its optimum state when we get to the place that we're going to get to. Now we're fighting a war that's worth fighting, and we're winning.
Exactly.
So here's what I want to know. I don't even want to talk about marketing. I'm serious. Like marketing is and this is ridiculous for me because the only reason we exist in the world is for growth and marketing and branding and all those wonderful things that go with it. And I don't even want to talk about it because everything you've said today, if it doesn't convince people that you have a no-brainer of a product, that as long as we have the minimal level of intelligence that we're gonna make sure that it's successful, it's crazy. I want to talk about investment.
Yeah, so I just want to build on it as you rightly said, right? Like we have this as a first product, right? I've been talking about it. We are going through an approval in EU, right? So we're going through a similar version of EU, right? Which will translate into us having it's called an ISO certification for medical devices. We have an EU certification, we have an FDA. It opens the door to about 70% of the countries in the world to go and locally register our products there. So it will be, probably a matter of months beyond those registrations where we can practically, be in 70% of the countries in the world, right? If we choose to be there, right? So, that's kind of what our eventual goal is in becoming an ecosystem of all these different products that we'll have that we're building on. So these devices are platform devices. And I'm sorry, I'm getting back to like the core of the devices and so on, but it's important to kind of mention that these are core devices, which are platform devices. So you can build off clinical therapies based on these core platform devices, which we already are in the process of, right? So we have two very active programs, one funded by the NIH, one funded by European grant, based on using the device as a platform for building on clinical therapies for osteoarthritis, for wounds using 3D bioprinting. So these are just very exciting programs that we have entered into using non-dilutive funding. So I just wanted to mention it real quick.
It's really important. And actually, there's a lot of the new products that are actually in the product line right now that we can't even talk about because they're so innovative, but they all speak to the same space.
Absolutely. And
here's the intention. In the future, Jointechlabs will be the definitive name when it comes to painless aging. That's right. Okay.
Absolutely.
And painless aging, I'll even move a step forward. I would say would become the definitive name when it comes to preventative pain, aging with pain, because you're getting to it early and then you're also dealing with it on an ongoing basis. So many are going to come out and just imagine what that brand looks. Think about what Apple looks like today owning their space. Think about what Amazon looks like owning their space. This is how I see you in the future. This is why I visualize the Apple stores type thing. But just even without those, you will dominate and own the space, because this device that you're leading with a blockbuster. You're leading with the best already, and then you're setting that as the level to come in with afterwards.
And even just to add on to that, even for aesthetics as well as, a lot of reconstructive space, there's a lot of preventative things that can be done. Like, it can start at the age of 40 when your skin starts wrinkling, right? You could just get a dose of every 6 months to a year instead of using Botox to numb your nerves, right? You can, instead of using
what is wrong with you people? Like, why would you do that? Why would any of you do? Look, okay, I'm just a repressed Catholic Irish guy, right? We don't get out much. But I don't understand why anybody would put poison in their head so that you can kill stuff that actually does not. Like, why would you do that? It's poison. It's chemicals. It's awful. It's terrible. And even if you say, shut up, Brian, you don't understand because you're a whatever. But even so, even if you do have to have reconstructive and you have to have something put in place, why would you put somebody else's fat in your body? Like, why would you do that? Like, you know that person is different than you. You just look at the person next to you and think to yourself, do you really want their fat propping up your eyebrows
or making sure that fillers, right? Like synthetic fillers, all kinds of chemicals go into those, and yet people, go ahead and do that. So
So this is something that nobody knew about before. So I'm joking a little bit, because you just go to your doctor and you do what your doctor tells you. And if your doctor says to you, you're going to put in somebody else's fat and you're going to put into, but it's because that your doctor wasn't aware of it. And your doctor wasn't aware of it because this was really hard before. You had to shake the damn thing for 45 minutes. There actually wasn't that many of them. That's not that many procedures that they've actually done. And it wasn't accessible and it wasn't easy. Now it is.
Absolutely.
So the next time you're going in, you will be insisting that your own stem cells are used for any type of, if you have a wound, of course I want my own stem cells. Like, even me with a non-medical background, I see no reason why I wouldn't do that. And if I'm going to have something reconstructive, of course I'm going to want my own stem cells. And if my joints hurt, of course I'm going to want there. I want to reallocate my soldiers to the place in my body where they need to be to protect the areas that are most at risk, stroke, most at pain. So it's just really, I'm excited when I speak about this, because what you're doing is really exciting. And it's not something which is 10 years away. You've done all the hard work over those 5-7 years to get to the place where FDA said yes, where the Europeans said yes, where now you're in a place where we can go for mass deployment, and all we have to make sure is that people understand the benefits to them. It's just that simple, right?
Absolutely.
So what do we need from investment? You've done so much with so little. I don't even know how you've done so much with so little. So just talk to us how you've done that, and talk to us what the future looks like for us to fully realize what can be done here.
Absolutely. And you're right. We've been very prudent financially in doing what we've done. In the 1.25 million we have raised so far, we have FDA clearance. We are at the doorstep of EU clearance. We have, a great patent portfolio. We have 8 full patents granted, which is kind of a little bit unheard for a very early stage company like ours. We have several continuation in patents, pending patents, PCTs all over the world, filed and, kind of in progress. We have begun to sign up, a lot of distributors in the United States, begun to train them technically, develop early sales over the last 3-4 months. So now with the pre-series A that we want to raise, what we want to do is to scale production, first of all, and production is in the United States. So that's one good thing that happened out of COVID for us. Earlier it was ex-US, as with price considerations, everybody goes ex-US, but
not anymore.
Not anymore, right? So we brought it back to Texas. So it's very local, no issues of supply chains and so on. So we want to definitely scale up production and develop a worldwide sales and marketing strategy. So till now, we have not spent practically more than $1,000, $2,000 on any kind of marketing for the devices. It's all word of mouth, reaching out to distributors, reaching out to doctors through our personal contacts and so on. So we definitely want to pan out a more of a direct sales approach, because that's how we find the doctors are reciprocating much, much, much faster and in an efficient manner. Because we talk their language, we explain what the differences are, how it will help you and how it will help your practice. Because till now, as you rightly said, the access was such a big problem. I don't think even 10% of doctors and hospitals or medical centers who want to do this are able to do this, right? So the market right now might look small just because of that fact, but in fact, it's a huge market, right? The market is practically any doctor who wants to do regenerative medicine. And that's in the thousands and the millions. So, in numbers of doctors, right? So practically that's what we want to do, develop a direct sales approach to reach out worldwide to, sales and marketing for our technology and build on the pipeline products that we have, because 3-4 years down the road, when we have these direct sales, established for all the devices, which are standalone devices, which are, as you said, leading the market, the way for us. But to build on with these pipeline products, which will be pure therapeutics, which will be biologics, it will take the company to a very, very different level.
Yeah, and we have to go fast. So now is the time to strike. There's no slow market entry. This is when we have to absolutely dominate. If we don't dominate, then we're going to find folks are going to suddenly realize what we have, and they're going to come after us real hard. Absolutely. So we have to dominate, and we have to own it, and we've got to make sure we're strong before anybody even thinks of coming at us. So I love that. So what do we need to raise?
We need to raise 1.5 million as a Series C or a pre-Series A.
Yeah, tiny money. And then, so what are we? When are we going to do the Series A, and how much are we going to raise?
For Series A, we will raise 5 million in late 2022 or early 23. So we have probably an 18-month runway.
I might be persuading you to move that timeline up a little bit. Okay. And I only say that because you have it in your hands right now. It's here. The only thing you need is just a great team to push this out to market, so everybody has it and everybody's ready to go. Like, you can't wait. And I even think like leaving it by a year or by 2 years, it doesn't do you justice. You've done all this hard work. You're ready. There's money in the market. We just need to get a little bit more proof that we can push it through. I actually think we could start hitting something for the beginning of next year. And that's why I love the relationship that we have. Sure. So I want to finish it with this. I want to finish it with last words from you. I will say from my side of it, I'm privileged to be part of your round. I feel really fortunate as an investor that we had the opportunity to invest in you. I believe entirely you're going to bring life-changing medical access to the world in a huge way. I think this is going to be huge, but what's going to come after this in the product pipeline is even going to be larger. And this is just a fantastic, awesome, great journey for me and for us that I'm so happy that we're on. And I need to get you down to LA. I told you my partner wants to meet you, but he doesn't travel much because his knees hurt too much. Sure. So you need to get your ass down to LA, even Absolutely. If it's just down for a day, and I'll get you over to his house. But I want to leave the last words with you, okay? First of all, I want you just speaking to investors when you're telling them what they're going to invest in. This is your 60 seconds to explain to them why it's so important that they invest in Jointechlabs. And then finish off, please, by giving your contact details as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, I want to take this opportunity to thank you and the Expert Dojo team. They've been wonderful in these 3-4 weeks that we've been together. We're learning so much every day. So thank you so much for that. And I'm sure we're going to, be in a different place with your help. So thank you for that, definitely. And, in regards to, what I want to say to investors is that, today we are selling disposable devices, right? With the money that we'll raise in 3, 4, 5 years from now, the goal is to create an ecosystem of regenerative medicine devices, therapies, and even services to establish as a standard of care, right? So instead of suffering through problems of aging, because our portable devices and technologies, doctors will now be able to offer non-surgical regenerative medicine therapies at the local clinic, which will mitigate the pain and suffering of everybody that we know of. So,
I love that. I can't think of anything more beautiful. And how can people contact you? Obviously, everybody can always contact me at brian@expertdojo.com, just in case you would like to ask any questions or you want to be connected, but just to contact you directly.
Right. So our website is jointechlabs.com. And my name is Nishit Pancholi. I'm the co-founder, COO. And you can reach me by email. So my first name, nishit.pancholi @jointechlabs.com.
That's a wrap, my friend. To greatness. Everybody listening, you have just heard a unicorn of the future.